We're working our way through a sermon series on seeing God through the gospel, and basically, how do we make sense of God? That's one of the things that came up in your sermon last week, Mark, was covenant and how that relates to marriage and that kind of marriage covenant. And one of the lines that stuck out to my son was how we're kind of married to God. And he's like, I don't know, what does that mean? So I don't know if he's ready to grasp all that means. So I was just figuring maybe take a couple minutes to unpack that.
Yeah. Well, I think it's an interesting metaphor that you have, particularly in the Old Testament, but in the New Testament as well, that our relationship with God is compared to a human marriage, and that level of intimacy and working together, growing in knowledge of each other, and that God desires that for us, and that it's not. So one thing I didn't mention in the sermon that I really probably should have in retrospect was I didn't grow up at all with this idea of having a relationship with God. That word was almost never used, and I don't remember connection with God being compared to a marriage, even though it's in the scriptures. And so I find it of interest that because we haven't talked about covenant, a covenant relationship with God, that we've sort of downplayed the relationship idea and basically made it more of, I believe in God, He gives me what I need, I get eternal life, but I don't really connect with Him much in this life.
And maybe we can add to that this layer of, for most people, it's if you want a relationship with God, let me invite you to church. And so really the church becomes almost an intermediary between God and people, whereas the church is the gathering of the people of God. And in Ephesians chapter 5, it says the church is the bride of Christ. In Revelation, you have that imagery too. So not saying that we shouldn't invite people to church, but that becomes a default as opposed to inviting them to experience a relationship with God.
And it's always then we talk certainly about word and sacrament ministry. We communicate the word, we celebrate the sacraments. But it's an interesting question to me. How do we, what else do we do in the church that really helps facilitate people's relationship with God? Mm-hmm. How do we, or does the church actually become sort of sometimes a barrier to a deeper covenant relationship with God?
Yeah. Well, and this next week we're going into the Trinity. And one of the things that fascinates me, and I'm going to reveal some of my sermon here, I guess, but is that in the scriptures, in Genesis chapter 1, when God makes man and woman, He says, let us make man in our image. And then in the image of God, He created them. Male and female, He created them. So the very complementary nature of man and woman together reflects something about the inner workings of God and how, well, God is not alone. If it's not good for man to be alone and we're made in God's image, that means God is not alone. God is in community too. So as we look at marriage, it's really this profound mystery that God is trying to reveal to us, and the creative nature of marriage. The two shall become one, and the one becomes three in childbirth. So the seeing God through the gospel also works its way into. It works its way through the mundane and the normal and the normal processes that life brings our way.
So, since you and I are such experts on marriage,
oh my gosh! Now my wife can't watch the video. Come on, Mark.
So, what do you think that you gained so far as a married guy, in terms of from your marriage that speaks into your relationship with God?
Oh, Mark. Oh, how much time do we have? Just having somebody there for you, a helpmate, if you will, somebody that offers correction, if you like, a different perspective on you. And I think one of the hardest parts about being lonely, which often happens in America, or alone, is that we have to battle our minds and our thoughts by ourselves. And we have to try to correct ourselves on our own. But to have somebody else who's saying, you're being stupid right now, maybe or maybe not a direct quote, is a helpful thing. But I guess just getting to enjoy life and these types of things. Yeah, those are just a few, I guess. What about, I guess you're 40 years plus, maybe?
Yeah,
So.
yeah. Well, I would agree, though, that having that sounding board, and then sometimes the real need to have someone speak truth into your life, that you really are off course. And I think and that's part of what, of course, God does through His Word, is speak that word of truth. And, you know, the Scriptures, the law acts as a mirror, and we see ourselves more clearly. And I think that to some degree, I mean, I don't think that we should. What's the way to put this? That we really sort of force our spouses to always speak that level of truth. But I think that's a good thing, because I don't think we always need critics either. And you know, we could have a critic 24 hours a day, but to have that, you want your spouse to be affirming, but then to balance that with criticism when you know, when it's necessary. Yeah,
1 Corinthians 13, the wedding passage, right? It's like, then we shall know fully, even as we are fully known. Right. And I like that language there, because we see in part now. Even, like, so marriage is one of these, like, we partially see each other. We're striving to see each other, but like, God fully sees us. And one of the letters to Timothy, Paul's like, God desires all people to be saved and come to the knowledge of the truth. And the truth comes second, because we need the salvation and the peace and the comfort first and foremost. And like, we'll get there. We'll come to see in fullness. And I think that's one of the beauties of marriage. Even, you know, I'm going on 13 years of marriage, you know, and that's over a third of my life that I've been married. And so just how shaping and defining that becomes as you just spend so much time. And so that's another element. It's just sometimes time, it does make all the difference. It just, are you willing to spend that time?
Right. Yeah, and I think that's been a hard thing for me to. Well, intellectually knowing it is one thing, but it's another thing to embrace the fact that relationships just take time, you know, and I think that's a challenge as you get older, because you know more and more people. Yeah. You know, you have all these generations, and you're trying to invest time, and but marriages need that, and relationship with God needs that time as well.
Exactly. Well, we hope this has been a helpful video for you. We're really trying to make our sermons, our messages here at Peace, practical and helpful, not just in terms of how we understand the Bible, how we understand God and faith, and then also how we relate to one another as we discover, grow, and go. So if you like this, like it, subscribe, all the good stuff that you can do on YouTube, go ahead and do that. But anyways, just know that we're here for you, and we hope this is a helpful video in your faith walk with Jesus.